Welcome to Module 1, Getting Started. So in this module, you'll learn about iPad and iTunes and should you update it every single time there's a new release. Important keys and multitasking gestures. It will actually help you use your keyboard a little bit better. And a very well hidden feature, searching your whole entire iPad. So Apple has updates to their devices and iTunes very frequently. So, should you update? Doing the update to iTunes isn't really a big deal, so I would say go for it. But I have a different opinion if you have a device. Now, this actually doesn't really pertain specifically to Apple. It could be if you have a BlackBerry or an Android device or any real kind of wireless technology. Should you update it when there's a release to the operating system? Well, my answer generally is no. When they release it, they can never really know that they've kind of fixed all issues. They don't know how everybody uses the device, what apps everyone is using, really. So when they release it, it's kind of a general update, and those people that download it and update it first are really global beta testers. So if you want to be a beta tester, go right ahead. I always recommend people wait at least a few weeks, even a month, for all the bugs to be worked out. Otherwise, you're going to get in this thing where you do the first release and then there's a bug fix and you have to do that update, and then there's another bug fix and you have to do that update. I'd wait a bit. And I'd also check forums if you're so inclined to do that, to see what people are saying about the updates. You know, is everything actually working, or does it do a major problem with the battery now, or what's the real issues, and should you really even wait a little bit longer? And I will always talk about the updates as well, so make sure that you're informed at darcitalks.com. Alright, so this is all about what's what on your device. So number one is the home button, and that's a pretty important button. You're going to be using it a lot while you're getting familiar with your iPad. You press this button when you want to exit an app and return to the home screen. Number two is where you plug that baby in. Okay, that's the dock connector, and that's at the bottom underneath the home button. Number three, that's where your speakers are. So that's a handy thing to know. If you want to hear it louder, you might want to not have the bottom sitting on something. Okay. Number four is on, off, or sleep, wake. Now this button locks the iPad screen and puts the device to sleep. You can also press this button and the home button to reboot your iPad when you're having problems. We'll talk about that in a later area. When you lock your iPad, you can still control the volume buttons, handy if you're playing music. Number five, well, that's either mute or orientation. You actually can decide what you want that button to be, and we'll talk about that in a later section. Number six is pretty easy. That's just the volume controls where you can raise or lower the volume. And number seven, well, that's where your headphone goes. So you plug that in right there. So let's reiterate again because it's so important. That's the home button, and it takes you back to the home screen at any time. To see your open apps, you double tap the home key. And once you've double tapped the home key, here is what you'll see. Here's my open app. So if I swipe left or right, I would see all my open apps, and to close them, all I do is pull up and it will get rid of that app or close it down. Now there's something called the control center. What you do is you swipe up from the bottom edge of any screen, even the lock screen. Okay, so this is what the control center looks like. So let's take a deeper look at this. So it is a little bit confusing. Is white on or is black on? So white means that that actual item is on. So in this instance, you can see that my Wi-Fi is on and my Bluetooth. This is where the volume control is. This is where you can skip forward or back in songs, so that's handy if you're listening to music or podcasts or whatever you're listening to. This is airplane mode, which we'll talk about in a further area. Of course, we can turn Wi-Fi on and off here, and we can turn Bluetooth on and off here. This is Do Not Disturb, and it's an easy way to silence your iPad, whether you're going to dinner or to sleep. It keeps FaceTime calls and alerts from making any sounds or lighting up the screen. When Do Not Disturb is on, it appears up there in the status bar at the top of your device. Don't forget, alarms will still sound even when Do Not Disturb is on. This is the world clock, alarm, or timer. The first clock displays the time based on your location when you set up your iPad. And you can add other clocks to show the time in other major cities and time zones. It's pretty easy to set up. But if you have any questions, don't forget you've got a question area or comment area below. This, of course, is the camera. And the last thing in the control center here is the screen brightness. So this is how you can control the brightness of your screen. And I like mine pretty bright, but it really depends on the situation. So some devices where you see swirl solutions, because that's connected through something called AirPlay, you may see something called AirDrop here. Now AirDrop is discussed in a later model, but it's actually available on iPhone 5, iPad 4th generation, iPad mini, iPod Touch 5th generation, and it does require an iCloud account. But what it is you can share data with other people that have AirDrop. You can share photos and contacts, websites, and documents from Air-enabled apps, so it's pretty cool. And the other thing that you might see here that on yours that we don't see is flashlight, which is pretty handy. So you can just quickly click on that and you'll be able to see in the dark. Now let's talk about that side switch we talked just a little bit before. Now it's key that you understand the side switch. So that's the mute or orientation. So if you go to settings and then general, use side switch 2, you have an option. You can either use that side switch, again that's on the top right hand side of your iPad, to either lock the rotation or mute. And it depends on how you use it, but if you're a reader, I would suggest that you have that button handy because you can just click on it whenever you want to lock the rotation, which means it'll stay in portrait mode. If you move sideways, if you're reading in bed or whatever you're doing, it'll stay in that same locked rotation. If you use it more for music and you want to mute it easily, then I would actually change it to mute. But let's say for the purpose of this, we keep it as it is shown here in its lock rotation. That means that in the control center, that's what we talked about before, that the mute button is there. If we switched it here, then lock rotation would be in the control center. So whatever you have on one, you have the other in the other option. Now a lot of the iPad use is really about getting familiar with your device. If you're not used to touch screens, it takes a little bit of, practice to kind of get familiar with it. Now, one of the key things is if you want to return to the home screen, remember you can always, do you remember? Tap the home button, or you can also, if you're in an app, you can pinch 4 or 5 fingers together and that will return you home. You can also test out the swiping. So if you have an app open or you have a whole bunch of apps open, all you do is you can swipe left or right with 4 or 5 fingers and it switches between apps. But again, if we double tap the home key, that also will bring up all the apps and you can scroll through them just with 1 finger back and forth. Try it out now. If you find that your gestures maybe aren't working, it could be that you changed a setting. So here's how you check it out. Go to your home screen, go to settings, go to general, and then you'll see here multitasking gestures. It has to be on in order for those gestures to work. The ability to search your entire device has been there for a while, but most people don't know about this hidden feature. It's so amazing. It will search your entire device for words in an email or an app that you don't know where you put it. It'll search for anything. So what you do is you just pull down with your finger and you'll see that the search bar pops up on the top. And then you can input anything you want and it'll search. I want to go over and show you actually how the search function works in this video. There seems to be some confusion. So anywhere in this area, just put your finger there and pull down. And then you can search your entire iPad. If you pull down from the top, that actually brings up something called the Notification Center, which I talk about in Module 5. But for searching, all you do anywhere in this area, put your finger there, pull down, and I can search my entire iPad for an app, for a contact, for an email. So have fun searching and finding things. So we talked about searching, but what do you want it to search? Maybe you really only ever want to search your contacts. You actually have the ability to change that. So where you go is to Settings, General, Spotlight Search, and this is where you can actually put more important things up at the top if you want by grabbing the line with the 3 bars, and you can move those around whatever order you want, or by checking and unchecking items that you do or don't want. So obviously the check marks on this example, everything's going to be search except podcasts. But if you only want your contact search, just uncheck everything except for contacts.